Okay, week. You have been exhausting and frustrating and joyful.
And you have been annoying and heartbreaking,
You have been scary.
very frightening, and very long.
And within this time, I have felt the whole gamut of emotions.
I have been afraid, though now I am feeling a little bit more hopeful, possibly an anticipation of what might be.
I have been hoping for change, for less hate, for less falsehood.
And now, while I feel better, I also harbor a great sadness that roughly 50% of this voting population, overwhelmingly white folks, by the way, accept the past 4 years of hate. And yet, here we are, held in this time, in this place, by our deep roots.
Here we are in this moment that has both possibility and sorrow, rooted in our belief in the possibility of redemption in every life and time. Here we are in the shadow of the words of our religious ancestor Theodore Parker, who said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve or complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience, and from what I see, I'm sure it bends towards justice."
From where we are sitting, we cannot see that curve, and yet I believe we have faith that it is still there.
We are particularly today holding those who are still afraid.
Afraid that hard-fought rights that some are newly acquired, might be taken away.
Afraid that they, like so many dreamers of a better and fairer world in the past, will not live to see the full results of that for which they struggle.
And yet we are also reminded that we are rooted in the belief that we are far better together than alone, that we are bound together in a deep interconnectedness, that we need one another. Our faith movement relinquished creeds many years ago and instead chose to embrace covenants. These are religious agreements on how we promise to be together.
Some would claim that our own country's constitution is a covenant, and if that is true, we are now collectively recognizing that it doesn't include all of those who call our lands home now.
By their nature, covenants are mutual agreements, and while the founders of this country attempted to build a foundation on covenant, the foundation remains unstable, and our collective home seems to sway on top of the gravel of racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, all those fears of the other that keep many of us occupied, many others willing to relinquish their fear into unchecked power.
Perhaps this time will call us into a new covenant with one another, a new set of promises we can make. Covenants require the hard work of deep listening and productive conversations, and they also require compromise and agreement.
Perhaps this was the original sin of our founders of this country. The sin that they didn't see everyone fully human, fully worthy of dignity. Thus, indigenous people, black people, women, poor, and queer folk weren't asked to contribute to the covenant.
Perhaps we can start to build this new covenant by recommitting to learning deep listening skills and re-examining our own commitments, by allowing ourselves to participate in healing journeys, even if we don't know the exact paths we will travel.
Sowing increased hope and love in our congregations and our communities.
Reaching out across the breach.
I know that there are many family members and friends who I deeply want to come back into covenant with. I miss them, And while their support of the regime of this past 4 years is in fact indicative of their ease of devaluing my own personhood and the people who I love for their own prosperity, I ultimately believe in the higher ideals of reconciliation and redemption.
In fact, our roots of covenant in this faith underscore that reconciliation and redemption happen only through the difficult work of relationship, communication, and understanding.
In these next many days, we pray that we as a congregation and as a family, as a nation really, that we come to recognize that if we have any hope in repairing the breaches of the past 4 years, we will need to reimagine this American constitutional covenant. Perhaps it starts by listening. Perhaps it starts with healing in our local spaces, in our personal spaces,
And in our congregation. Only then may we recognize these words of activist and women's suffragist Susan B. Anthony, who said, "It was we, the people, not we, the white male citizens, nor yet we, the male citizens, but we, the whole people, who formed this union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them, not to the half of ourselves and the half of our posterity, but to the whole people."
Perhaps, just maybe, we could begin that hard work right here and right now.
Or maybe in a couple of days, because it has been a week.